So I went to another gym the other day and Dojo stormed my old private coach lesson past him with knee hikes, and it was very fun and enjoyable. So much so that he coached me afterwards saying I should do it better, even though it worked every single time. So if you want to learn how to pass your coach or your previous coach, this is the video for you. We're going against some very good guard players yesterday, and one of the more difficult things when you're trying to pass somebody who's extremely bendy and extremely flexible is the fact that their knees are always going to be closely situated towards their chest. So it's not the easiest thing in the world to start to flank these guys, because as soon as you do, they lay back on it. Yeah, exactly. They do something like this. And you can continue around this fashion, but they're going to get connection to you eventually. And yeah, exactly. They're always going to be spinning around you. So one of the methods that I found particularly useful yesterday is once you get there, you don't even have to put these guys supine, because they're more likely going to want to be there rather than wrestle up. If you're versing somebody who stays seated with a forward posture with their shoulders in front of their hips, these guys are more of a flight risk for standing rather than supine. And they're two different styles, and you start to realize that there's a lot of different styles and you need different methods for those different styles. So these guys want to lay supine because they're more flexible, they're less likely to wrestle up. One of the best things that I found yesterday was continually pinning their heels to their ass was stopping them from pulling their legs out to stop me from going to the side. When you get into this position, it's quite easy to start to dictate where your legs will start to come to the middle. We don't necessarily, like I was saying, we don't necessarily want to go around the outside of these guys because they're very flexible. They can start to pull their heels to their face. You're like pretty flexible. They can start to do this, you just never get around them. So going up through the middle is usually a pretty good idea. And we're going to start to use headquarters passing to do that. So notice how I've got both of his ankles controlled. You want to prevent at all costs his heel coming to the inside here and then giving him inside position straight away. Exactly. Now you're just going to have to go back. Now you're just going to have to deal with this before you can start to make meaningful movements. He actually has the advantage here rather than I do. So when you're entering into either side, depends on which one you pick, you're going to step actually quite deep underneath the hamstring and you're going to give him this grip. This isn't the end of the world. It's not his advantage yet until he can start to get this foot into the inside. So we're going to be very, very aware of that. We're always going to control this ankle. And then as soon as we get to the ankle control, we get our foot in the correct position, we're going to start to drive our knee forwards. Now for him to be able to get his foot on the inside like he just did, he's got to beat my grip and he's got to be super, super ridiculously flexible to get past where my knee is. Yeah, exactly. He's got a hand assist. By the time he does that, I'm going to reclaim his ankle and go back to here. Now this leg, once I've got my hips in that low position where I've driven my knee forward, I'm actually going to let go of this leg because my hips are going to take the position of my hand. Now I've got this free floating hand here to be able to do basically whatever I want with. He's going to try and frame up at this stage. I can start to peel frames off, pinning him to his chest. The one rule that I tell myself when I am using this style of passing is that I don't want my hands on the floor for any reason. Because if I start to put my hands on the floor, all my weight is now on this hand. I'm not putting significant weight into his, to his shin. And I'm actually starting to put myself into a position where I start to get off balance over this direction. If he just starts to move his knees to his chest, yeah, exactly right. And now he can start to enter into my legs. He can start to put in ashigaramis and all those sorts of things. So the rule being is that as soon as I get down to here, I'm picking any part of his body, whether it's his wrist, the inside of his bicep, the inside of his armpit, his neck. Use that sparingly, and you don't want to jab people as well. You don't want to also squeeze their neck, but use it sparingly so you can start to keep your posture. Then you're going to get your partner to start to off balance you, left, right, overhead, backwards, and you're just going to play this game of staying nice and tight over this with your hips centered over the top of his ankle where it meets his shin and never touching the floor. So go. You should find a decent ability to be able to float in this position, and then we're going to start to pass from there. So he's already in a supine position. We're going to keep his heels pinned towards his ankles, and we're just going to open up one side as we step in. He's always going to take that grip. It's very predictable that he does so. We're always going to maintain our hand on the ankle of where he takes the grip, because if we don't, he starts to pull it. Yeah, exactly. He starts to pull his legs to the inside. Exactly. Now we're dealing with this and we're not passing. So we're sitting over this side. As soon as we get our hips over the middle leg, we're going to plant that down. We're going to release this hand. We're not putting it on the floor. That's the rule we're not going to break. We're always going to be searching for some sort of grip on him, whether it's inside bicep, pinning the wrist to the chest, Ashton's favorite, any sort of variation of grip. Then he's going to try and off balance me. He's going to take me to the left, to the right, up, backwards, and we're just going to float in this position, pinching our knees together, staying connected, using our hands on our training partner, and then we're going to go from there. Let's give that a go. Lukey actually asked a good question. He's like, all right, where do you want their knee facing? Now, they're going to have to make a choice of where they want their knee to face, and it's going to be predicated on where we're sort of moving. So depending on if his knees pointed towards our bottom hip versus his knees pointed towards our top hip is essentially where we're going to go from here. One nice thing that I saw Kynan do against Roberto Jimenez is he actually starts to bat this knee down to get them to reflexively open their knee against the resistance. He'll give them enough tension, not to try and just put weight onto it, but to get them to open their knee. And as soon as they open their knee, he dives across to the other side with a knee cut. Notice how immediately what I did was punch my hand underneath the space between his armpit and his lat so that I can make sure that he can't wrestle up. If I forget that step and I don't put my hand there, exactly right, we're giving him the advantage instead of us the advantage. Also, when we're knee cutting, I remember when I first was taught this, I was trying to get all the way over this direction. You're kind of essentially doing the same thing. If you go all the way up here, you leave way too much space. He pummels his hand to the inside and you think, oh, well, why doesn't this knee cut work? This is kind of going nowhere. So what you actually want to do when we're starting to bat this knee towards the inside, he's going to open up his knee. You cut directly across to the far side of his hip, and then all of your weight on the inside, depending on whether you use your left knee or your right knee, goes back down and towards your ass. Now, if he tries to get his hand in front and re-pummel his underhook, he can't, because my top shoulder is always going to be over his top shoulder. If he tries to kick me in the ass and send me forwards, I've got so much weight back and down towards his hips, it's not going to be effective. If he tries to bring his legs in to any degree to use them, he can't, just because of where my positioning is. To finish this pass, what we're going to do is go for our crossface. We're going to start to look. He's going to latch up to my ankle at this stage. We're going to start to look for the top leg. We're going to free our heel, and then we should be able to extract our leg, pointing our knees towards him at this stage. When we're past his legs, we don't want to continue to sit in this position. We always want to face his hips, walk his legs down, back and away, and turn his knees away from us for a top pin. So, we get into our headquarters position, we're controlling the ankles, we're doing a good job. We notice that we can start to put weight on the outside of his knee to bait him into opening it for us. Because if you try and knee cut against the knee against your bottom hip, it's just not gonna work. My hips are gonna be wedged completely. So what I'm gonna do is start to force it. I'll put weight down on with my chest or with my arm. He's not gonna like this. He's not gonna like the pressure on the outside of his knee. You're gonna open it reflexively. I'm gonna start to knee cut straight across. I keep my chest and my shoulders and my hips all nice and low so he can't manipulate my body weight. I reach for my crossface, I start to clear off the top leg, clear off the bottom leg, and then I immediately start to walk and turn his hips down and away. Let's give that a go. Playing a very simple game. Get your fucking toes out of my shorts. We looked at a very simple game of batting the knee down and then him reflexively opening the knee up. What happens if we bat the knee down and he's a bit of a lemon, he doesn't really understand this game too well and he just keeps his knee in position? All we're going to do from here, we're not going to break the rule of putting our hands on the floor. We're going to start to put our hands on our training partner wherever we can find them, whether it's the armpit, the bicep, the wrist, Ashton's favorite. And we're going to start to pop up ever so slightly, just so my hips and my pelvis get over the edge of his little white knee here. You make me look tan, this is great. So I'm just going to start to reflexively pop up, pinch my knees together as I come up. I'm going to bat this leg through the middle. When I do this, I'm aiming to get his leg in this L shape this direction as my left knee comes around the corner and goes into this direction so I can stop him from bringing his knee through the gap. If I just go up like this and push his knee in, he just brings it back, exactly. So we're down here, we're fighting away. I bat this into the middle, he's not really taking the bait. I'm going to come up, pop up, pinch my knees together, and I immediately start to close that space down. Notice again, my left hand is always searching for the underhook on this side, as this time I drive my left knee down into the middle between his ribs and his armpit. The most important thing from here is that I get my chest connected to his chest by any means. I want to beat his frames before he can start to put them in. So I'm going to start to collapse my chest like this. Once he tries to frame me up, and now it's such a disadvantageous position for him, I can start to get into underhooks, I can start to go for double unders, I can start to get him into chest wraps by coming up underneath the head, and now we're in a really, really nice position. We're in 3/4 mount. We're not too far away from simply extracting our leg and coming into mount positions. And when you do it at speed, the likelihood that you get all the way to mount is actually pretty high, because they're so perplexed by what you've just done to them. They go, holy fuck, and then you're already in mount. So we're starting to put weight on the inside of his leg here. He's not really taking the bait for the knee cut. That's an option that we can't use from this because we don't have the environment to be able to use it just yet. We're going to pop up, slap that knee between our legs, and then we're literally just going to dive all our weight forwards, going chest to chest, trying to collect at least one underhook on the way. Collapse all our weight down, reach for the underhook, start to get our single chest wrap. We can start to put our weight of our chest and our shoulders nice and high so that he can't bring his arm back down through the middle. And then if we can, if he's doing a poor job at keeping our foot connected, we'll bring our knee to our chest. If he's doing a good job at connecting to my leg, I start to bring my butterfly hook in, extract the top leg off of my legs, and then I can start to bring my feet down towards the sides. Notice when I do that, I bring my knees up nice and high so that he can't just reclaim my leg easily. If he goes to reclaim my leg now, where my feet are towards his hip line, it's extremely difficult to be able to reach my feet. If I'm lazy, I leave my knees down, he can start to easily reclaim my leg. Again, it's not the worst thing in the world to get put back into 3/4 mount because you can just repass him again and rack up a bunch of points, but you would prefer that you're in this position with your knees up nice and high. You can start to expose elbows off the body and then go into our attack systems from here. Let's give that a go. So we get to this position, he's doing a really good job with his knee. We start the knee hike and we claim this underhook on the way down. Again, we start to lift our chest and shoulders all the way up above his head. The likelihood that he gets his arm down from here is so incredibly low because your whole body weight and your whole torso is behind it. If you're just relying on the extension of your shoulder here, yes, sometimes it's not going to be enough, especially with bigger, stronger guys, not Ashton, but bigger, stronger guys. You get to this position, you're trying to lift, and it's not really working all that much. This is why we don't consider mounting usually without underhooks, because it's such a fucking battle, it's just not worth the squeeze. So if you can always mount with an underhook, that's a great idea. And then as soon as you do get one, take your chest, your head and your shoulders all the way up here. It's now my elbow to elbow grip and my collarbone coming up and over the head here that makes it incredibly difficult for him to start to do anything in terms of escaping. So we're going to start to free our leg, get our feet nice and high up underneath the armpits. And if he does a bad job at keeping his elbow to his ribs, which is likely because he's worried about this hand, we can easily start to reach down and then claim this hand as well, claim this elbow as well. Fuck, you got some band-aids on you today. What are you doing?
Mate, forward.
Okay. Anyway, so if we get this hand on his left-hand side pinned underneath our chest, a reliable way to start to extract that is by taking our hands and switching them, keeping our chest and shoulders forwards, looking for where the gap is with that hand, and then coming underneath nice and tight to start to get back to our original position. Once we've got his hands stacked on top of each other like this, we're in a really good spot to start to hit S-mount armbar attacks. So what I want to do is I want to start to move all the way up and over as I start to come up onto my left side. I'd prefer doing it on my left side. You could do it on your right side, and just depends on how the arms are stacked as well. If you're very good and you should be able to choose both sides, I would ordinarily choose the side where this arm is exposed, because that's the one you're going to be arm barring and you won't be running into too much defense here. My knee's fucked, so I can't go into the other side, but start to come up, presenting your knee and your elbow connected to each other as you start to build height by pointing the top of your head up towards the ceiling, bringing your right leg up and around the corner. Sorry, this is going to be fucking horrible. Bringing your right knee up and around the corner and pressing your calf into where their shoulder meets their tricep here. I'm going to be nice to Ashton for the minute. I'm not going to just completely crush his chest. Ordinarily, if you were doing this properly, you would start to come off your toes and start to come all the way up, sitting up into an upright position, but I won't do that to him today. You're going to be compressing their breathing the entire time. So don't freak out here. Don't immediately reach for the arm. Start to sit them in this position for a meaningful period of time. The likelihood that they defend as they're starting to get more and more tired gets lower and lower the more you put them here. He's going to try and bump, he's going to try and kick, he's going to try and bridge and do all these things. Just keep your weight centered over his chest. If you need to post, it's not the end of the world. Just make sure that he doesn't sit you backwards, because if you start to roll backwards, you don't have any good connection to a triangle or an armbar. You're pretty much the position's going to fall apart. So if he does has his arms in the correct defensive position, I need to armbar this arm. Obviously, I can't armbar this arm because it would be going that way. What we're going to do is feed underneath, in between both of his wrists. I'm going to get my his elbow into my armpit. I'm going to start to wedge his arm underneath like this. Now I've got a free shot at this arm, and he can't use his secondary hand to defend. What I'm going to do from here, I'm going to take my left hand, the one that's closest to his head, I'm going to pin this up to my top shoulder towards my bottom hip, and then as I start to do this, I will close this gap over the front of his face. So now that I've got his head controlled and his torso controlled. Ordinarily, it's best practice to break from here. People make the mistake of rolling back to their back, but we want to break in this belly down position because it's extremely difficult for him to start to defend. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this pinned up to my top shoulder. I get both my knees to the mat so that I can free up my secondary hand, and then we put a decent amount of tension into the arm through the back of the elbow. once more. So we land in here with our underhook. We're always remembering the rule of taking our chest, our head, and our shoulders nice and high. You should be able to get in between his ribs and his elbows by pulling your knees up towards his armpit. Once you do that, you can find the crook of his elbow and then start to get underneath here. Now, when you do this, the hands are going to be always underneath your chest or pinned between your chest and his chest. So you're going to switch your grip, start to go underneath, exposing his hand, and then go back into that original elbow to elbow position. He's in a really shit spot here. There's not really much he can do. Most of his escapes from mount are predicated on touching your hips or getting an inside elbow so that he can start to widen your knee. He can kick around here, he can start to move around. I'm not really gonna be on his hips. I'm gonna be over his chest and shoulders. So it doesn't matter how much he bridges and kicks, it's going to be relatively ineffective. He may at one stage start to get one elbow back because I'm too wide. He starts to bring that down, no problem. We just reboot the exact same thing every single time. And this is why this is one of the most effective positions, because the way that he defends is just by pulling his elbow down to his ribs. Even if he gets it there, my knee is in the way. So it's not too much of an effort to start to come back underneath, expose his hands and come back into this position. We're going to start to take our chest, our head and our shoulders high. My knee goes outside the line of my elbow, but they're connected. And I'm going to start to lift everything up as my calf comes around the corner. I want to wedge his head on top of my knee so that his chest is compressed and his chin is towards his chest. Remember, ordinarily, if you're doing this in drilling, just keep your left foot flat like mine is along the floor. If you're in a training round, it's okay to be able to start to come off your toes and start to put pressure into them. Don't be too much of a dickhead to your training partners. Do it in competition by all means, but that's the correct way to do it. Once we see that his defensive arm is across the line here, we're going to go in between with our palm down. We're going to start to wrap our armpit over his elbow and wedge that in nice and tight. Now when he tries to grab this arm, he can't. As soon as we recognize that his hand's free and available, I'm going to start to take his wrist all the way up to my top shoulder, towards my bottom hip, and then I'm going to start to step over the face. If I have to post, I have to post. There's no problem there. I go both knees down to the mat. I get a good tight grip on the hand here, and I'm going to start to extend for the armbar. Let's give that a go, then we'll wrestle.